Good evening and welcome to the Warren City School District regular meeting of the Board of Education. Today is Tuesday, May 25th, 2021. The time is 6:06 p.m. and we are located at Warren G. Harding High School in the cafeteria, and with the help of WSCN via Zoom with live streaming available at warrencityschools.org. This meeting is a meeting of the Warren City Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is a time for public participating via email during the meeting as indicated in agenda item number 11. With that, I'll call the meeting to order, and if everyone would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Oh, much better. If we could call the roll, please.
Mr. Fowley?
Present.
Mrs. Patterson?
Here.
Mrs. Shannon?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Present.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Here. Everyone is present and accounted for. We have no need for agenda item 3 at this time, so we'll move to agenda item 4, which is communications. Mr. Shiro, please.
Thank you. I have 3 communications this evening. First, at Mollenkopf Stadium. Tonight we are having a family band event since we were unable to have outdoor concerts or indoor concerts for our students to demonstrate their hard work and dedication within the musical program here at Harding High School. We have approved with the health department's blessing to have the family band night this evening for our students, and that I believe starts at 7:00 p.m. Also very exciting that on Thursday we will have graduation also at Mollenkopf Stadium starting at 7 p.m. for our class of 2021. Both of these events, the family band night and graduation, are ticketed events where each graduate or band member would have a set number of tickets. I believe it's 4 for each event for their immediate family, and that coincides with local health orders. Speaking of health orders, I know under the superintendent's report, we're going to talk about the Board of Education Policy 8450, which referencing the protective facial coverings during a pandemic or epidemic times.
Okay.
But I do want to state publicly that the governor has been very clear in communicating with us as schools that though there are changes for vaccinated and non-vaccinated individuals, that does not apply to schools, at least until June 2nd. And since school is going to be out here for students here on the 27th, all of these events, including graduation and the family band night, follows the prior health orders and the desires of the district for all participants to be masked, demonstrate distancing, and participate in mitigating factors, one of which is if you're feeling ill, do not attend the event. So those are all in place for both events. And as I shared with the board on Friday, Mr. Capers and I penned a letter out to our families, for at least for the graduation event, notifying them of our expectations and the importance of following those expectations so that we can have an excellent event for our students. Finally, the third item I would like to put as a communication is some of the board members may be aware and some may not be aware. However, the facade that sits out on the front of the property here, we noticed late summer and spring was experiencing a little bit of issue on the porch and patio. The stonework started heaving and moving and shifting, and now it's just at the point that it's ready to fall over. Not the facade, the stonework in the front. And so we've been working with architects, we've been working with companies that do this kind of work for months, trying to get any kind of idea of what the remediation cost would be on the stonework. So a company that does a lot of work for us, it has a great reputation in the district, Miller Yount Paving, did give us an idea of what the minimum cost would be for removing this, the stones, fixing any kind of concerns that have existed, as well as returning them to the structure. And if everything would go good and there would be no issues, in other words, bright, sunshiny days the whole way through the project, the minimum cost would be a little more than $113,000 for the stonework and remediation for our historic respect project on the front of the property. And again, there's no funds set aside for that. That would all be funds that the treasurer, the board would have to set aside to do this work. again, this is not something that we're actively doing. We needed to find out where we are with this project or where we could be, but you could definitely expect if we're going to fix the front of the facade, the porch area, the pillars, the stonework, you are looking at a minimum of over $100,000. So with that would conclude my communications for this evening, and we will continue to provide you more information on that potential project as we move forward.
Okay.
Is there any questions?
Yeah, I was going to say, does anyone have any questions regarding that?
What's our obligation in regards to the facade?
Well,
I couldn't hear the question. I don't know if it was for me or for...
what is the obligation that we have to the facade?
I would say the obligation from our end is safety.
Okay.
So if the stonework is uneven, we have an obligation to making it safe or to making sure that the public is not in that area or space. If it was a sidewalk in front of a school, we would handle it the same way, but because it is our property, we need to ensure the safety of those. It's not a trip hazard or anything else. I mean, if the front pillars and the front porch decide to peacefully fall forward into the landscaping and no one was hurt, then we would have to decide what we were going to do. But again, as it was preserved, I'm saying over a decade ago, that area is definitely in very immediate need of remediation. We've gone through the fall, the freeze of winter, and the thaw again, and it's not going to get any better.
Okay.
I don't think it poses any kind of safety threat now, but
Okay.
you can see it's gapping. We could provide you more information and pictures probably in another week or so, or at a future meeting, so you could see what we're discussing.
Yeah, I think, because, well, John, you would know about it, and Jackie, do you remember the? Yeah.
Yes.
So when we passed the bond issue, the voters dedicated $1 million set aside from the bond issuance to preserve the old building.
Okay.
And that is what we were able to do with that $1 million. So now we're at a point where, like you say, there's some remediation that needs done. So I think, from that historic aspect, we have an obligation to that as well.
I agree with that.
Because it was voted on.
That's what I wanted
By
to
the
know.
public,
Was-
yeah.
so it was voted
Yeah.
on, okay.
And
So-
I would just point out that it was a locally funded initiative, like Patty said, in the original bond issue. And there is money left over from that still.
Okay.
Available to use for something of that nature.
Perfect. All right.
Excellent, thank you. For
Yeah,
that.
so if you can perhaps maybe do that, I don't even know if you want to gather photos from like the inside as well, just so that I think everybody would want to
Or
be
we can
up-
maybe have our next board meeting there.
No, we don't want to do that.
No, air conditioning,
That's a
please.
hard no.
I'll be
they,
in Florida. Can I do Zoom?
I'll be in Florida. Yeah, so if you can do that, perhaps we can do like a little, updated presentation for
I think
all
Mr.
of us.
Lacey would love to do that when he gets back.
Yes, that's a
Okay.
great
Just
job
don't
for
let him go
him.
over there alone. He has to have a buddy.
Safety in numbers.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's move on to agenda item number 5, which is the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Call the roll.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mr. Fowley,
Yes.
Mrs. Shannon,
Yes,
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. Item number 6, the treasurer's report. Mrs. Scortino?
Okay, on the agenda tonight for your approval is our 5-year forecast as updated for May of 2021. We originally approved a forecast in November of 2020, and there has been some changes since then. At that point in time, we were not certain as to what pandemic effects would have on the state budget cuts. Since then, we've been held to, actually, there's been some restoration of our original cuts, and we are being held to our fiscal year 19 numbers moving forward for state funding. So that that was a significant change because we were anticipating in November possibly a 5% to 10% cut in revenues due to that. So I'm glad to announce that that is not happening. So I have presented in front of you your 5-year forecast. I wanted to start off with pointing out our revenues for 2021 in total. We're set, and this is general fund only, just to make sure everybody understands that. They're $77,143,000 approximately. And then your total expenditures for fiscal year 21 was $70,100,000. So we have an excess of $7 million that we are not deficit spending. One other item to point out is we were able to transfer, well, I'm proposing, I should say, we've already transferred $1 million to our permanent improvement fund. And I'm going to propose for your approval at the next board meeting that we transfer an additional $4 million to permanent improvement. So that would be a total of $5 million transferred this year. With that, that's already included, and we have revenues of $7 million in excess of our expenditures this year. So at the beginning of July 1, 2020, we started off with a $42 million cash balance in our general fund. I am estimating that at June 30th, 2021, we will end with approximately $49 million in our general fund. So moving forward, as always, our revenues are pretty stagnant. And you'll see in 2024 and 2025, we have a decrease in revenues. It's 1.6 million in 2024 and then 3.3 million in 2025, which is due to we are not able to forecast a renewal levy. We will have an emergency renewal coming up in those years, so those numbers are not included in our revenues estimates. With that said, you'll see we are not deficit spending any of the years of 2021, 22, or 23. But in 2024 and 2025, we are deficit spending in our estimates slightly. But if those if that renewal levy was included in, we would not be deficit spending. Okay, so just wanting to point that out. I also proposed in 2022 to move an additional $5 million to our permanent improvement fund. In 2023, I am estimating we should move an additional $1 million to the permanent improvement fund. So over the 3 years, that would be moving $11 million. I think it's the best route to go in terms of the improvements we've been encountering that we need to take on as our buildings are getting older, and also the costs of construction has definitely increased due to the pandemic. So we're finding that even the projects that we have are way over what we originally expected.
Yes, yeah.
So I think it would be prudent to move forward and start funding our permanent improvement fund for future capital improvement needs. So just to summarize some of the forecast items, I gave a presentation to you. Typically I do this on a PowerPoint, but due to the setup here, I just provided you with a hard copy, and I will make this available on our website for anybody who would like to review. But the first item is our operating revenue. As I mentioned, we have $77 million in operating revenue for 2021. Just wanted to point out that 77% of our total revenues comes from state sources, which is our formula, state aid, and restricted grants and aid that comes from the Ohio Department of Education. 22% of our revenue comes from local sources, which is our property taxes. And as you can see on the next page, the breakdown of tax and property tax revenue, and you will see the majority of our revenue is coming from Class 1 and Class 2, which is your residential, commercial, and industrial. We don't get a whole lot of tangible personal property that's being phased out. We still do receive reimbursement on our fixed sum levies, which we have 2 emergency levies. In addition, we have the public utility, which is our one property tax revenue that continuously increases, and we collect that typically at 100% collection rate. So then moving on with state aid, like I said, that we are heavily reliant at 77% of our revenues is coming from the state Ohio Department of Education based upon our formula funding, and that we have been blessed that we have a high economic disadvantaged population factor, so our state aid is heavier, and that's where our balance has been growing, coming from these numbers. So, and then a couple factors concerning the state funding. We are assuming in 2022 through 2025 that we will go back to fiscal year 19 funding levels, and that's based mainly upon the governor's proposal. Currently out there, there are promotions of the fair funding formula and changes to that. They're proposing that through legislators, but that nothing has been finalized on that. So that's on our radar to keep looking at. We should benefit from the fair funding formula. I think it'll be pretty consistent with where we are now in revenues we're receiving. The one area that would be different is they propose that the wellness dollars are rolled into the funding formula. So then that is right now separate from our general fund. So those costs then would have to shift back over to our general fund if those funds came in. So when speaking of the wellness dollars, I would like to point out that in fiscal 20 we received 1.1 million. In fiscal 21 we received 1.5 million. It is the governor's initiative to continue to fund that. In fiscal 20 it was $250 per student. In fiscal 21 through 25 we're assuming $360 per student. Okay, and then moving on for operating expense summary. Our total operating expenses were $70,100,000. And just to point out that salaries and benefits makes up 61% of that number. And then purchase services is 30%. So in looking at our salaries and benefits, you will see on your chart that in 2021 and in 2022, we are seeing a decline in our salaries and benefits. And that is mainly due to we were able to, under the continuance of operations, shift some costs to the ESSER dollars, and which was able to support maintenance staff, teaching staff that did online education. We also had a loss in revenues to athletics, so we were able to pay for our athletic supplementals out of the ESSER funds. All of this helped our general fund. So in the forecast, you'll see in 2023, our salaries and our benefits jump back up. And that is because we have to add those salaries back in because those ESSER dollars will expire in 2023. Now, we do have a new round of ESSER dollars coming in, and we will continue to budget for that. It's I believe the application is due in August in terms of how we are going to fund it. And we are looking, obviously, 20% of that total ESSER budget is dedicated to closing learning loss gaps. So that's going to fund all of our after-school, our summer school programs, all of these additional programs that we are doing to try to bring students back to where they need to be will be funded under that, and it won't have any impact on our general fund, which is a great thing. Also, looking to hire new teachers, new tutors possibly, educational assistants. All of those can be under this new round of ESSER $3. And there is news coming out from ODE that our title dollars are going to be increasing as well. So my hope is that we will be able to shift from the ESSER 3 into title dollars once the ESSER dollars expire, so that we can continue to sustain those additional costs without impacting our general fund. The factors that affect your personnel costs and your benefit costs obviously are your salary base increases, your step increases, your additional education increases, all of which are linked to our salary schedules that are approved in our negotiated agreements. Those are all considered in here in forecasting out what our future costs should be. Also, changes in staffing and retirements, all of those items are factored in when we project out what our costs are moving forward. Also, in benefits, we have seen decreases in benefits through our negotiated agreements. Our staff is contributing an additional percentage employer share each of the year for the next 3 years. So that will decrease the board's cost of health insurance benefits. And we have been very diligent in managing our self-insurance fund, and we've seen been able to see low increases in premiums and actually holding premiums at a steady level, and been able to do what we call a premium holiday, and that is that neither the board or the employee has to pay that premium for a month, just based upon monitoring that self-insurance fund balance. So it's a benefit to both the general fund and to the employee. And then moving on, the other operating expense that is significant is our purchase services. And our total purchase services in fiscal '21 was $19,540,000. 71% of that total is due to deductions from state aid. And when I say deductions from state aid, I mean your community school deduction, your scholarship deduction, which consists of Ed Choice. Then you have autism scholarships, Don Peterson scholarships. You also have tuition and then open enrollment out. All of those factors are making up 71% of that $19 million. There are some numbers that you'll see moving forward in your packet that shows enrollment history from 2014 to 2021. So what we're seeing in 2021 is a slight increase in our formula ADM, but I do want you to keep in mind that the state funding, like I said, is frozen to fiscal year 2019 levels. So we can benefit from that when our enrollment's declining, because we're not going to see any cut in our state funding. Obviously, if you have growth, then you will not experience anything unless it's significant growth. They do build in a growth factor, but nothing that I think would impact us. So then just a couple items of notation is our open enrollment has stayed pretty consistent. We actually picked up 5% of open enrollment in this year. We went from 119 to 126 students. And then community school ADM increased significantly this year, and I believe that to be mostly due to the impact of COVID. Probably families looking to go to an online school, we've seen that increase. Or those families who just needed to have their student in 5 days a week, possibly, those factors, I think, are the main reason for that increase, and I do anticipate that to turn around. So we look at community schools about an average of 685 kids coming out a year, and that's decreasing at about a 2% each year level. And the average cost for a community school deduction per student is $10,332. So one of the things with community schools that makes it very difficult to project what your actual total deduction is going to be is your students could decrease, but your deduction could increase because of the special ed categories. So if a student has more weighted special education, then their costs could be higher, and you're going to receive more of a deduction. Then also the scholarship, we've had a impact, obviously, from the Ed Choice expansion. Most of that impact occurred in fiscal 2020, where we had an 18% increase. In fiscal 21, we've only experienced about 5% increase. So we've got about 421 students going out on scholarship. And so other than that, I guess just moving forward, where do we go from here? It's my objective and the administrative team's objective, and Mr. Shiro's very good with knowing the numbers and being very frugal. So I appreciate that working relationship. So, just making sure that we aren't deficit spending, that our revenues are exceeding our expenditures. That's always the goal. And continuing to monitor what the state budget will have. And obviously after the next 2 years, we'll have a new governor, and what impact that could have on us. That's always the forefront, because like I said, 77% of our revenues are coming from our state funding. And then I think that we've made so many improvements to our curriculum, the programs we offer, and our report card continues to improve. All of those factors, I think, will help us to bring back students. And, that's our focus. Those are our goals, to increase our revenue and maintain our expenditures, just continue to right-size our staff and our programs along with our enrollment. So I will, like I said, have this presentation available on the website for anybody's review. And I'm very pleased with the forecast, and I'm very pleased that we are able to fund our permanent improvement.
Yeah.
And I think now is the time to do that. But that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions for me.
Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Pam. Thank
a
you.
big, huge thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. So now we'll move on to agenda item number 7, the superintendent's report. Mr. Shiro.
All right, thank you. I wanted to engage in a conversation regarding our Board of Education Policy 8450.01. And this is our policy called Protective Facial Coverings During Pandemic Epidemic Events. Basically, we put this policy into place in August, whereas we were requiring students and staff to wear facial coverings as well as other mitigating factors in times where there was increased community spread, such as what we were experiencing when we were bringing students back to school. What this policy does is the board authorizes the superintendent to require facial coverings and other mitigating factors when the superintendent sees fit due to these factors. So the superintendents in Trumbull County were talking about this with our health commissioner last week as we had a number of health guidelines or changes in health guidelines come forth. And as I mentioned earlier during communications, even though there's a change in health guidelines that were retroactive to maybe the 17th or 19th of May, I don't remember the date, and that on June 2nd, when you wake up on June 2nd, there will be no health guidelines in place, generally speaking, in many places that require someone who's vaccinated or not vaccinated to wear a mask. There will be no masking requirements in general places. And a school district has the right to invoke any rules, regulations therein related to that. I've talked with our local health department, and the recommendation where I am moving forward with this is going to be as such. I am going to recommend that students, well, first of all, students will be required, as well as all adults, on our transportation systems. Because in public transportation, which would be school buses, you would be required to wear a facial covering. That'll continue. Nice part of in the summer, in the fall, the windows can be down, provide some extra air going through. The distancing requirement has been reduced, so we can have 2 students per seat. Now it's only 2 students if you're from the same household, but everyone, regardless of vaccination, if they're going to ride a Warren City Schools bus, needs to properly wear a facial covering. Properly being the key word. Our athletic director, Mr. Nicholson, is here, and Bill, in all of our events coming up, every student and adult riding a Warren City Schools bus is required to wear a facial covering. That's not because that's what the policy says. That's the intention of the still health order hanging out there for public transportation, such as airports, et cetera.
Okay.
Secondly, in talking with our local health department, I'm going to continue for our June educational activities indoor facial coverings. And I'm going to read a little bit from the communication that we shared. While the pandemic is still active, mitigating factors like facial coverings and masks remain our best defense along with vaccination for indoor settings. So we could relax the mask or we can continue the mask. For the month of June, we're in air-conditioned quarters. We have plexiglass areas. We are going to continue to require masking in school settings. Now, we're not going to say if you're vaccinated, not vaccinated. We're going to continue to require masking indoor settings. Again, unless you're in your private workspace. You come to my office, sit behind plexiglass, I'm not going to be masked. I'm fully vaccinated and I'm working in my office. If I'm working in a school setting, we're going to have the expectation of masking at least through June. We could readdress this later. Okay? In regards to outdoor settings, I'm going to recommend that we ease up on facial coverings in outdoor settings. That was consistent with the guidance I'm receiving from local health officials. The facial coverings are not encouraged during outdoor times. Distancing, again, should be encouraged as well. So when we're outdoors, if it's our athletic programs or if it's students between here nor there, wherever they're going, a facial covering will not be required come June 2nd. But distancing, social distancing is going to be an expectation We're going to continue with our mitigating factors of cleaning, sanitizing, et cetera. So our adults are going to have to work with our students if it's in the June program, for academics if it's in our athletic programs, promoting distancing, promoting hand washing, health screenings, personal health screenings between parents, et cetera. But we will ease up on outdoor facial coverings in general outdoor settings. Again, this will not apply to our band event this evening or graduation. This will be when all health orders expire on June 2nd. So we are going to continue with this. This doesn't mean this is what our decision is going to be for August when we return to school. We're going to take it 1 month or one period or chunk of time. So that's what I'm comfortable with. Again, working with our local health officials, I wanted to just gauge the spirit of the board here as well. We are always trying to keep everyone safe, and I think indoors is the greatest level of concern that we have at this point.
Yeah.
I think it's a good course. The course
doesn't-
you're on, I think it's a good course.
Yeah, we're going to continue to encourage vaccination, as I've said in every communication I've put out there. Vaccination, especially with children, is a decision between the parent, the child, and their healthcare professional. Just because we chose to do it in my house doesn't mean that someone else needs to choose to do it in theirs.
Correct.
And we're going to provide and facilitate the opportunity for families that wish to. In our sports programs, I've talked with one of our varsity coaches last week, and Mr. Nicholson and I next week are going to talk to the rest of our coaches. What's going to happen here is if you have a case of COVID on a sports team, the vaccinated athletes can continue playing. Those that are not vaccinated, off to quarantine. So pick any team. You may have kids working really hard if they want to keep playing while the rest of the kids are out for 7 to 10 days or whatever the case may be. And again, I have updated guidance regarding isolation and quarantine. I'm not going to get into that this evening because we always will continue to follow the orders from our local health department. But it's going to impact, the first impact is going to be with sports.
Yeah.
When it comes down to who's vaccinated and who's not. So I think when we're indoors, at least for the month of June, and we'll decide what we're going to do for July.
Yeah. I mean, I know that we're, if you're watching us, you're seeing us sitting here, we don't have masks on, but we do have barriers in between us, and we've all been vaccinated, so, we're comfortable, but obviously, when we move about, we're masked indoors. I think I'd be a little more nervous if this place was filled with people. I definitely
Have my mask
would probably have my mask on, but that's my personal choice, so, yeah, I think there's nothing that we have to change then
Nothing we have to
per our
change.
policy or anything, it's just,
I'm going to ask Wendy, Mrs. Hartzell, real quick, because we both read this policy extensively, and basically, it's the board authorizing the superintendent
Right.
to implement or require, again, with local health official guidance as well as the conditions. And so, again, we're expecting our county to drop out of high incidence if it hasn't already in the last few days, since our last call with the health departments. So, again, we don't have to require masking indoors, but I think that just
It's
being
wise.
prudent, I think we need to do it for a little while longer, and we'll reevaluate what we're going to do. Also, our staffing plans, and right now, we are planning on students coming back to school, again, 5 days a week like we did the last 9 weeks.
Great.
All students returning to school. There is no online option. I saw Mahoney County ESC Superintendent Tracy Hostetler on the news this morning, and they were asking Tracy about it, and she was very clear. The state does not have a remote learning option. You're either coming back 5 days, or you have a blended learning option if the district goes that way. We are going to file a blended learning plan in the Warren City Schools, and we may have that option available to our families, but we're still working that out, and we're staffing our buildings as if students are coming 5 days a week. Blended learning can be an option where students have to attend partially in person and partially remote. So we are looking at that very deeply, but at this point, we're looking at the full 5 days being the main option.
Great.
And we're blessed we have options. We have Monroe available to us. If we need to have a location, we have one. We can open it within days.
yeah. I think that's important that, number one, you already have this kind of under your belt, and Because we can't predict what the future is going to look like. And you don't know what the fall is going to look like, what winter is going to bring. So, as long as our policies are such that you have that flexibility to do what you need to do, I think is everyone in agreement with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. We definitely need to err on the sad of caution, and I think this is
Yeah.
definitely it. So we are responsible for the community's children, and so,
Especially
yeah.
when we look at our K through 8 schools.
Yeah.
Students 12 and under have not had the opportunity to be vaccinated, and that is over 50% of our kids are going to be in our June program. So to me, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to mask for our June program.
Yeah.
What we do for our July programs, we'll reevaluate.
But yeah.
But for now, we're going to remain masked in our classrooms.
Okay,
I agree. Very good.
great, very
Thank
good.
you, thank you. All right, that's it for you? You don't have anything else? No
That concludes the
surprises?
superintendent's report for this evening.
Okay,
The words you wanted to hear.
I was waiting. All right, let's move on to agenda item number 8, which are our Board of Education committee reports. And first up would be athletics, and I see Mr. Nicholson in the audience.
Absolutely.
Good evening, everyone. I don't have a whole lot tonight. A couple items. Got a state tennis qualifier from Orange Harding, Mr. Anthony Payavlis. He did well in the districts in Akron over the weekend and qualified. He's the number 5 seed coming out of there. He'll be playing in Mason, Ohio this Friday. And I want to wish him the best and congratulations to him and his family. It's been wonderful watching this young man grow in tennis and represent our school district, and I think he's going to do all right down there this weekend. He's only a junior and keeps improving every year, so
Very good.
Yeah, it's
Awesome.
exciting.
Congratulations,
Yeah, it
Mr. Payoffs.
it is. The other thing is we still have track regionals going on tomorrow night, semis at Austintown Fitch High School, and we have the finals going on Friday night. We still have quite a few kids still running, and I'm expecting a few of them to get down to the state tournament also. So
Wow.
Excellent.
it's a good time of the year, reaping some benefits of working hard, and we always do pretty well in track, and tennis is special right now. So that's basically all I have. Is there any questions?
No.
I don't have any. Does anyone have any questions?
Congratulations to Mr.
Yeah.
Pavlis.
Go team.
Yeah.
Go.
Good luck, good luck.
Oh,
Of course you
great.
will. Good luck to our track stars and our
Yeah.
tennis star.
Yeah.
Bring
Racket
home,
and the Running Raiders.
bring home the hardware. All right, financial advisory, I know we're still talking about doing a meeting. Do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, July.
Oh, perfect.
Do something.
And Nick Santucci did reach out to me that when we have a meeting, I think he was one of the ones that, when he was with the chamber, but he has changed jobs, he's working with Mahoning County ESC
Oh.
as kind of like a legislative liaison. He would like to still,
Okay.
be on that.
Okay. Oh, that's excellent. Perfect. Board policies and guidelines?
None.
Just
No.
what we
Yeah, just
discussed.
However, I will probably have a meeting with Barb from Neola
Okay.
here in June, once things settle down. So I'll try to do some summer work on policies and guidelines, and then we'll meet and convene.
excellent.
Legislative, I don't have anything.
I
You
don't
any?
have anything.
And then TCTC, I did speak with Mr. Faulkner, and he just wanted to convey that they had an extremely successful commencement ceremony at Eastwood Field.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and it was
Wow.
very, very, very nice. So he just wanted to let everyone know that. Okay? So do we have anything under old business? Anything under new business?
Just one question. With the extended learning this summer, the younger children are going to be outside on the playgrounds, and the sun is terrible, and there's no shade in any of the playgrounds. So if that could somehow be addressed with the sunbrella, sunshades, or whatever, I'm sure the students and the teachers would be very grateful.
Mr. Fowley and I had a conversation about this, I think in April, if I'm correct. And we are starting to look into this, and I don't know that it'll be something that we have for this summer, because it will take time and effort to do that. And The wheels of change move slowly, but it is something, it has been addressed, and it's something that we are looking at. Again, when we do anything like that, it takes individuals to have the vision, which we've looked into, and take the time and do it. Also, do we do it in-house? Do we look at items, materials? So we are going to look into that, but it probably, it's unlikely it's going to be in place in the next couple weeks. But it is coming.
Thank you.
All right. So let's move on to the agenda items. Number 1 on page 3, Mrs. Shannon, please.
Wait a minute. Page 3. Oh, okay. Treasurer's recommendation? Okay. Treasurer's recommendation, minutes. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding the May 2021 board minutes be approved as submitted.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes, and the motion carries. On page 4, item 2, Mr. Fowley, please.
The monthly financial statement. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding the April 2021 financial statement and short-term investments made by the treasurer during April 2021, Exhibit A, pages 53 through 54, be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any questions? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes, and the motion carries. On page 6, item 3, Mrs. Patterson, please.
The appropriation budgets. It is recommended the resolution listed below to approve appropriation budget A be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any questions on this? Just a good job to all of you.
Thank you.
Go ahead and call the roll.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Shannon?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes, and the motion carries. On page 8, item 4, Mr. Walker, please.
5-year projection of revenues, expenditures, and assumptions. It is recommended the resolution listed below submitting the 5-year projection of revenues, expenditures, and assumptions be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any questions regarding this? This was the presentation that we had. Okay, please call the roll.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Shannon?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes, and the motion carries. On page 9, item 1, Mrs. Shannon, please.
Superintendent's recommendation, agreements, contracts, and/or leases. It is recommended the resolution listed below entering into agreements, contracts, and/or leases A through G be approved as submitted.
That's-
Second.
That takes you to page 11. Does anyone have any questions regarding these? Okay, if not, go ahead and call the roll.
Mrs. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes, and the motion carries. On page 12, item 2, Mr. Fowley, please.
Donating personal property to an eligible nonprofit organization located within the state of Ohio that is exempt from federal income taxation per 26 USC 501A NC 3. It is
Second.
recommended the resolution listed below to donate personal property be approved as submitted. And I believe these are the 18 boxes of historical paraphernalia.
Yes, and there definitely could be more.
Yes,
I'm sure.
Confident.
Yeah,
we have some stone we could donate too.
we might need that. You know, repurposing.
Yeah.
Okay, and we had a second, I believe.
Second, yes.
Perfect, thank you. Go ahead and call the roll.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes, and the motion carries. I think we're all happy with that. Those documents
Yes.
and everything will see the light of day, so that's awesome.
And just so the other board members know, there is a transcription party
I did see that,
to help decipher some of the things which are handwritten.
yes. It's a volunteer, on a volunteer basis, down at the library, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
All right, moving to page 13, item number 3. Mrs. Patterson, please.
The 2021-2022 membership in the Ohio High School Athletic Association. It is recommended the resolution listed below authorizing the 2021-22 membership in the Ohio High School Athletic Association be approved as submitted.
Second.
Okay, does anyone have any questions? Go ahead and call the roll.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Shannon?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
I'm going to vote. Going to vote yes on behalf of our students.
Yes.
However, I want to say that I am not very happy with the Ohio High School Athletic Association.
I echo that.
And, yes,
As a
and,
superintendent, I'm not either.
and they are in the process of charging districts to participate. We all know that they suffered quite a loss of revenue
Yeah.
last year, and now they are putting that on the backs of the school districts, and that is not right. And so I'm publicly calling them out on that. But my position on this board, while myself, I feel that a no is warranted because it affects our students.
Right.
And this is on behalf of our students, I will
Right.
vote yes. But I think there needs to be some pushback and accountability on their part. And I'm off my soapbox.
I agree completely. I'm opposed to the expansion of the playoff system
Yes.
to which
Yes.
lower seeded teams will be playing higher seeded teams of varied athletic ability, which could potentially hurt
Yes.
or put children at risk. That's my concern, is the health and safety factor that exists for children for what is a perceived financial gain.
Yes.
And I definitely agree with you, Mr. Shiro. I think that their decision, in spite of professionals' recommendations, to continue with that expansion and put children, not adults, not young adults, children and their futures at risk is despicable.
Because of the dollar.
Yes.
You may absolutely.
Mr. Nicholson, if you would.
Mr. Nicholson,
Mr.
please come over here.
Yep.
Thank you.
The Ohio High School Football Coaches Association, the majority of them, I believe, are against this also. I think they've written letters down to the OHSAA. They had expanded it from 8 teams to 12 this year. Then all of a sudden they added an additional 4. So, you know, not only are you guys feeling this way, whatever, the coaches even feel this way. So what will become of this, I'm not sure. But as Mrs. Lamperos was saying, one of the things that being in the Ohio High School Athletic Association allows our kids to be in tournaments and compete at higher levels. And it also provides catastrophic insurance for any type of a catastrophic injury by belonging to the Ohio High School Athletic Association. So, you know, there's still some good benefits with this, but I think the rest of the state is kind of feeling that way too, and we'll see what direction they go in. You know, this could be a 1-year shot, and then they go back to normalcy the following year, depending probably on the revenues.
I don't like that word. Okay.
Yeah.
I like the words, you know, student athletes is ranks high, higher
Yeah.
than a revenue, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And normalcy will not be what it used to be. There's going to be a different criteria for what is normal.
Well, it's the new normal.
Okay.
Okay.
Did we call the roll on that? We did, yes. We're done.
No, I don't believe we did.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did.
I didn't mark it
Yeah.
off.
Yep.
That's why I said-
Yeah, we did.
Okay,
Okay.
We all voted, I checked.
okay.
So we'll move on to page 14 and item number 4. And that would be Mr. Walker, please.
Declaring transportation impractical. It is recommended the resolution listed below declaring transportation impractical be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any questions? Go ahead and call the roll.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Shannon?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes, and the motion carries. Okay, on page 16, item 5, Mrs. Shannon, please.
Ranking professional design firms and authorizing negotiation of criteria architect agreement. It is recommended the resolution listed below ranking professional design firms and authorizing negotiation and criteria architect agreement be approved as submitted.
Second.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Excuse me, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
you're okay.
Fine.
Okay, call the roll, please.
Mrs. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes, and the motion carries.
Here,
I
it's
know.
getting to me.
Yeah. It's Okay, on page 18, item 6, Mr. Fowley, please.
Resolution to specify the Warren City School District's intent not to provide career technical education to students enrolled in grades 7 and 8 for the 2021-2022 school year.
Second.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, go ahead and call the roll.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Shannon?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes, and the motion carries. Okay, on page 19, item 7, Mr. Walker, please.
Acceptance of gifts. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding acceptance of gifts be approved as submitted. We have Christ Episcopal Church to Lincoln PK through 8 school for T-shirts. Farmers National Bank, Warren City Schools, monetary donation. The GFWC, Ohio Junior Cyberlinks Club, McGuffey PK through 8 school, 20 field gift bags. And the Western Reserve United Methodist Church, Jefferson PK through 8 school, pantry items and monetary donation.
Do we have a second?
Second.
And thank you, as always, to our benefactors who support our schools, our students. We're so appreciative. Go ahead and call the roll.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes, and the motion carries. On page 20, item 8, Mrs. Shannon, please.
Tuition reimbursement. It is recommended the resolution listed below for tuition reimbursement be approved as submitted.
I second.
Any questions? Go ahead and call the roll.
Mrs. Shannon?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes, and the motion carries. On page 21, item 9, and in its entirety, please, Mr. Fowley.
Amen.
Resolution not to reemploy Skylar Monich O'Neill as Supervisor of Special Education and Related Services and re-employ as a 3 through 5 principal, Willard PK through 8 school. Whereas the contract of employment of Skylar Monich O'Neill as an administrative certificated employee with the Board of Education of the Warren City School District, the board, expires on June 30th, 2021, and whereas the board has received a written recommendation from the superintendent to not reemploy Skylar Monich Monich O'Neill as Supervisor of Special Education and Related Services for the purpose of reemployment as a 3 through 5 principal, Willard PK through 8 school, upon the expiration of the current administrative contract. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Warren City School District pursuant to sections 3319.11 and 3319.111 of the revised code that the board does not intend to reemploy Skylar Monich O'Neill as Supervisor of Special Education and Related Services for the purpose of reemployment as 3 through 5 principal, Willard P through 8 school, when the administrative contract of employment expires on June 30th, 2021. Section 2, the board hereby authorizes and directs the treasurer to notify Skylar Monich O'Neill in writing prior to June 1st, 2021, that the board does not intend to reemploy her as supervisor of special education and related services upon contract expiring. And Section 3, the board approves the superintendent's recommendation to employ Skylar Monich O'Neill, 3 through 5 principal, Willard PK through 8 school, Exhibit K, page 82. The board hereby authorizes and directs the treasurer to execute the contract of Skylar Monich O'Neill, 3 through 5 principal, Willard PK through 8, for employment on behalf of the board, and to take all other actions necessary to carry out this resolution. Section 4, it is found and determined that all formal actions of this board concerning or related to the adoption of this resolution were adopted in an open meeting of this board, and all deliberations of this board and any of its committees that resulted in such formal actions were adopted in meetings open to the public in compliance with all applicable requirements of the Ohio Revised Code.
Second.
Thank you. Go ahead and call the roll.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, because Mr. Fowley had to read that and not me.
Well, don't
Mrs.
hold your
Patterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes, and the motion carries. And actually, Mr. Walker, I'm going to call upon you. Because our
What goes
colleague-
around comes
yes,
around.
because our colleagues, I want to give her voice a break.
Thank you.
So on page 22,
It's okay.
item 10, in its entirety, Mr. Walker.
I knew it was coming. Certified administrative contract appointments, whereas.
Oh, wait a minute, is that the right one? Hold on.
No, that's
no,
not it. No,
that goes
you
on
don't
for
need to read that.
Yeah, no, that's not the right,
Endlessly.
there was,
Is that right?
did I get the?
You s-
I thought I had another one. Hold on, pause for one moment.
Are we out of order?
Pause. Let me see here. Okay, all right, so guess what? This is not in its entirety.
Okay, all right.
But let me see here. I think you should just go up to, the nominations are accepted. I think that's good.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay?
Okay,
first four paragraphs.
Yes.
gotcha.
You see that? It's like the
Yep,
fourth paragraph there. Yep.
and I said the wrong word anyway. Certificated administrative contract appointments. Whereas the contract of employment of the administrators listed below expire on June 30th, 2021, and whereas the superintendent of the Warren City School District, Trumbull County, has recommended the administrators listed below be employed in the position indicated for the term indicated, and whereas the administrators listed below has been notified of the date their contract expires and of their right to request a meeting with the Board of Education. Be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Warren City School District, Trumbull County, Ohio, pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 3319.02, that the nominations of the superintendent are accepted.
Perfect. Do we have a second?
Second.
That takes you to page 25. Okay, call the roll, please.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Shannon?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes, and the motion carries. Okay, and then moving on to page 26, item 11, Mrs. Shannon, and if you could also read up to the nominations are accepted.
Okay. Classified administrative contracts appointments. Whereas the contracts of employment of the administrators listed below expire on the dates indicated, and whereas the superintendent of the Warren City School District, Trumbull County, has recommended the administrators listed below be reemployed in the positions indicated by the terms indicated. And whereas each of the administrators listed below has been notified of the date of his or her contract expires and of his or her right to request a meeting with the Board of Education. Be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Warren City School District, Trumbull County, Ohio, pursuant of Ohio Revised Code Section 3319.02, that the nominations of the superintendent are accepted.
I second.
Thank you. That takes you to page 28, and call the roll, please.
Mrs. Shannon?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes, and the motion carries. On page 29, item 12, Mr. Fowley, please.
Appointments, reappointments of instructional staff members, 2021-2022 school year. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding the appointments, reappointments of instructional staff members for the 2021-2022 school year be approved as submitted.
Second.
Thank you. Go ahead and call the roll, please.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes, and the motion carries. On page 30, number 13, Mrs. Patterson, please.
The salary tables. It is recommended the resolution listed below adopting said salary tables be approved as submitted with changes as indicated.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead and call the roll, please.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes, and the motion carries. On page 31, item 14, Mr. Walker, please.
Personnel recommendations. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding personnel items A through O be approved as submitted.
I second.
Okay. We do have some retirements under classified on page 38. And this will take you through to page 50. We want to congratulate our retirees and thank them for their years of service with the school district.
Yes,
I think Mr. Tabor is the longest one, am I correct?
That's correct.
Listed on
Most
there?
senior in the district at this time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Wow.
All right, do I have a second?
I think I second.
You did? Okay.
I think I did.
All right, let's call the roll.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Shannon?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes, and the motion carries. And moving right along. Okay, agenda item number 11, we don't have, we did not receive anything as far as public participation via email, so there is nothing to report there. At this time, I would entertain a motion for us to move into executive session under the provisions of Ohio Revised Code 121.22. The Warren City Board of Education recessed into executive session at 7:14 p.m. to discuss the annual evaluations of the treasurer and superintendent.
So moved.
Is second? Do I have a second?
So,
Oh, thank you. We still got a little way to go here, guys. Go ahead and call the roll, please.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Foley,
yes.
Mrs. Patterson,
Yes.
Mrs. Shannon,
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos.
Yes, and the motion carries. We'll be moving into executive session. There will be no action taken following executive session, so we will be adjourning from that. The meeting, formal meeting has concluded, and we thank you for joining us. And be safe, enjoy, best of luck again to our athletes that'll be competing at the state qualifying levels.
Yes,
And,
congratulations again.
and we'll see everybody on Thursday for the graduation of the class of 2021 in person. Yay.
All right, congratulations, Raiders.
Meeting adjourned.